podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you can please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. I'm Majestic.
Justice Rajee.
Man. So, given the moment and the time of day and what just occurred, we're just gonna jump in and talk a little World Cup. You know what I'm saying? I got enough understanding of soccer to be dangerous and maybe say something ridiculous. And but we know enough about a lot of other stuff that will, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll make sense. Even if we have hot takes on football or soccer, we can back it up with some like historical context about other shit.
That makes sense. So, spoiler alert, if you haven't been following, by the time you record this, you was trying to save and find out who won the World Cup. Later.
You've been hiding under a rock. You've been not trying to watch any kind of global news.
Right. Well, I guess I don't know if I have to give express written permission from FIFA to talk about the score, but basically Argentina won in penalties. It was a wild game. Mbappe is a bad man and a damn scary individual. You know what I'm saying? Like, as soon as they got that penalty, that first penalty, and because I was watching the match and I was like, damn, if they up 2, but the wild thing about soccer, and for those that don't watch, they don't watch football, the international name, football is like 2-0. It's like, yeah, man, we got a big lead. But then as soon as you get one goal, it's not a big lead no more. Like, it's, in other sports, you can, the way leads feel impenetrable. Like, it's very exposed when you watch enough, of the beautiful game that, like, yeah, oh man, you got a big lead. You're doing great. You guys are in control. And it's like, oh, snap, we can lose now.
Like, it's like a 16-0 football game that everyone feels like this game is over. And then it's like, oh, it's 16-8.
Right.
It's not over.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it is exactly, and it's more fluid so that it can change quickly, right? Which I do think is something that in the kind of American watching context has its own challenge. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at like football and baseball in particular, it's a really organized way of who's doing what and who's like kind of in control.
Yeah.
And then other people are responding to it. Basketball a little less. And hockey would be very similar to football, to soccer in that context, that it would be like anything can change fast, but even hockey doesn't feel like it changes as fast as soccer does.
Yeah. But, and just real quick, just to hockey's benefit, if you've never gone to see hockey live, go see hockey live.
Oh, I would argue it's the most enjoyable sport to go see of any American sport.
Yeah, live. I mean, on TV is not terrible, especially with HD. But live, it's like, yo, things moving, the pucks flying, skates and stuff, gigantic humans on skates, like 6'5", 6'6" dudes on skates going fast, crazy.
And here is my kind of obligatory point to make to everyone, just in case you didn't know. Black folks were some of the first folks in hockey too.
Yep.
So it's important for us to get that, because again, very much like soccer, we have this idea of sports that belong to particular ethnicities.
Yeah.
And, hockey falls in that, but there were there were leaders on Afro-Canadian teams going back, to the 20s and 30s, and many of the, players in hockey right now that are good are like Afro-Canadians, which I think also it's an important thing to think about, that we don't think about hockey being Black because of our understanding of Afro-Canadians.
Yeah, indeed.
You know what I mean? And so we don't think that, when we think of Afro-Canadians, we think of Drake and Caravana, which is, you know.
It's a late arrivals, at least the Drake part. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Drake's
We'll
a
just
late
leave that
arrivals.
there.
It
It's
is.
like Drake and Caravana is Afro-Canadians. Like, so, it is important to note that sport also, its history is entwined with blackness in Canada and has black players. So
Yeah.
back to left
No,
my PSA.
no, all good, all good. So, I think the thing that the World Cup always elevates, even outside of like just the play of the sport, is sort of the sense of global connection. And as I think as Americans and in the US, we day to day live such a there's nothing else happening in the world except whatever's happening with us here kind of existence, unless it's something like germane to something that's related to us happening here. Like, so, you know, there's, we know what's been happening in Ukraine and the war and the conflict there and the invasion by Russia, but it's a issue in American conversation and American dialogue because of the perceived or real and the real or perceived proximity to like the Cold War and the influence of NATO, like all these other things that become stake issues for the U.S. So what's happening in Ethiopia is just off the radar. You know what I mean? For most Americans, right?
Right.
And there's inside issues with that when you know more about what's happening there, and in other conflicts that may be going on. You know what I'm saying, in the world, but the sense that we enter so many things sort of just from the like, why is it important to us? And I'm sure someone's going, but isn't that the way that we should think about things? Kinda. Sometimes stuff is not important to you, but it's still good to know about, right? So like the World Cup makes you kind of like go, all right, especially as black folks, I always think about like, the dual identity, multiple identities, the feeling connected to here, but then, depending on your orientation and your experience with, you know, American sports and American and it's particularly soccer, which has its issues, within its terms of its accessibility in the U.S. I still contend, in my semi-informed opinion, that there's structural things about the way we play that I think we're starting to break out of it, but like there's some stuff, right? But then you see all these countries and like if you're watching the French team, you're like, man, a lot of African brothers, a lot of brothers, like if I didn't tell you that was France and I just said that was the blue team, you maybe whether it's a good thing or not, you might have been like, where the French dudes at, right? You know what I'm saying? But like they are, obviously French folks, you know what I'm saying? And the nature of sort of demographic spread and the legacy of colonialism, the legacy of, prior ages, that there's a movement of people move around the world, and especially in the places that have been the centers of like global trade and commerce in ways that they don't move in other parts of the world. So in the U.S. and even on the U.S. team, this year there were several players like Weah, what's my other dude's name, like who are like they're U.S. folks. They either their peoples grew up here, but like some of them grew up overseas. Some of them, what I mean, like like their access point isn't totally just a like I was born in a small town outside of Peoria, and now I always dreamed of playing soccer. You know what I'm saying, at the highest levels. And you get the banner waving. Folks discover some of our white brothers and sisters discover their ethnic heritage. You know what I'm saying, when the World Cup come around, they're like, yeah, USA, but like the Netherlands or Spain.
Right.
You know what I'm saying, like and all these things, depending on where you're situated in the country, you may not be familiar with ethnic neighborhoods of various European communities. Or like I grew up with, Greek and Italian neighbors who were like, I'm Greek. I live in the US, but we're Greek. You know what I mean? Greek Orthodox Church, the Russian church, you know what I'm saying? You're dealing with the Eastern Orthodox religion, folks. I mean, out here actually that's a dynamic. We got a significant, Eastern European immigrant community. So like some of those dynamics show up, but it's always like a wake up, a reminder that like other parts of the world, like they're moving around and they're connected to each other, and like sort of the construct. If you ever read Sapiens, which is a great book, I recommend. Which I'll get the brother's title, but he discusses the concept of like the nation state as an idea that like most humans have agreed is a real thing. So therefore, you're I'm from Senegal, and I'm from this nation, and where 1,000 years ago that wasn't necessarily the way that would go. And not even 1,000 years ago, actually, last 250, 300 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some places, fluidly enough, the last 70.
Right.
Right. I mean, I think according to the formation of what we call the Middle East, right, which I think is always important to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is a structured term that we do. Like just like people be like, that was South Central. Now we'll be like, that's South Los Angeles. Right? Like that it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same,
like,
but got a new name now.
Yeah, it's got a new name now. It's the same, like, the South. No, it's South Central, but yeah, that's a whole story about South Central, which I think is a very good example of how things are named according to identities of places that then outlive that. But the point about the whole Middle East thing is like you may have had people who align much more by tribes and groups than they did by nations.
Yeah.
And that's why we're all having this unique challenge even now around like Abu Dhabi and Qatar. And most times we're saying Qatar, but it's Qatar. Like about these families and tribes who were in places, and frankly, cities and nations and states are emerging from those tribal places versus the other way. Like normally what we do, we fit tribes and people into these lines. Yeah. We're uniquely in that area now. These places are emerging that they weren't there before, frankly, or they were there, but not in their current formation. So I think, and I think that's an important part of why the World Cup being in an Arab country was important, right? Because we have this idea in America about soccer being for rich white people, because we don't think it's like for poor white kids.
Yeah, no.
Right? Like that, we say they should play football. Yeah. Or if they got freckles, they should play baseball or something, right? Like Mike Schmidt. Like we don't think that. We think it's like we have a political framework around a sport, soccer moms. Mm-hmm. Right? And what that means for who plays it. And then we also obviously have many of our immigrant communities who play because of their countries. So we've framed it like that. I counter that if LeBron James would have been given a soccer ball to dribble since he was 3, he may have ended up differently. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have young people who are amazing athletes in this country, right? Who, because of like you're talking about the access, the way we play and the way we structure it of how you can get access. Now, to be true, to be globally good, we know by the time you're 13, right? Like in soccer, if you're not good by 15 or 16, there's a good chance you're not going to be good, right? Which is a little different than some of our sports. Like we have sports structures that allow you to try to be good later into your adolescence and young adulthood. Mm-hmm. Like, you could go to a school and be okay and then still go to the pros, where like in soccer it's not that. But I do still think that the access to fields, the access to people who understand the game would have a lot to do with giving young people different opportunities in regard to the sports. Shout out to Black Arrow. Black Arrow is an organization dedicated to advancing soccer in Black communities, and they actually partnered with Atlanta United to get fields at the MARTA stations across Atlanta.
Oh, dope.
to be able to do that. So it takes a degree of intention, I think, to do that for America to broaden it and see it beyond that. But also to touch on what you said, I think it is a really, we built on earlier, it's a real identity check. It really starts to make you see the multiple identities that people have because of migration, immigration, colonialism, groupings of countries, right? The uniqueness of, to your point, a lot of folks are playing on the American team, but they might spend time on naval bases. They might spend time on army bases and, have one American parent. I mean, that's a whole thing with world football that, there are teams who go and recruit folks that they know of any of that origin. And they go and tell them like, hey man, we'll come play for us. And it's like, yo, I ain't been there.
Try to
You try and get in, you try and play, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's like somebody coming to you right now if there was like a brain bowl or something for all the marbles and being like, just, we know that you lived in Willingboro for the first 18 years of your life. How would you play for Team New Jersey? You like, but I ain't lived in New Jersey forever. Like,
I
yo,
ain't
you got
paid
to play for
taxes
Team New
in New
Jersey.
Jersey as an adult at all. Like,
Yeah, like, but you're
it's like
from
that's
here,
okay.
man.
Don't worry about that. You know what I'm saying?
Don't worry about that. Put on this jersey of the Garden State. But so I think it is a thing where we get a 4-year checkup on how the rest of the world views identity. And then I think this is the one place where America then tries to like catch up to how the rest of the world is already functioning with identity.
Yeah. And it's I think it's really interesting because like the way at least the way I experience, I should say the way I experience folks like excitement even or like energy around Team USA. I mean, for years we've had this like, we're not sending our best. We don't have like the best athletes in America playing soccer, which I mean I can say maybe, but I actually don't think the idea that we get all of the maximum athletic potential out of everyone that could be an athlete in America, I just don't think we do. You know what I mean? And I'd love to anybody that studies this stuff to prove me wrong. But I think the assumption that like, yes, even in the sports that we do really good at, we definitely find most of the gigantic humans to play basketball. But even then you see some dudes that's like, yeah, he big, but he ain't good at basketball at all. Like, but he big though, you know what I'm saying? And same thing in other sports, even to the degree that we don't maximize, any, to my white brothers that are fast and nobody will let you keep running, I apologize because it ain't right. People should let you go ahead and live your speed, man. Like, we got to stop this. Like, these dudes out here, they're like, man, I can play cornerback. I got sprints. And people are like, no, you don't. Go over there and we're going to teach you how to do some other job. You know what I'm saying? Or we're going to put you in baseball, and modern baseball is like, we just throw fast pitches and hit the ball hard. We don't do all that cool stuff like Ozzie,
Ozzie Newsome.
Ozzie, back in the days. Ozzie Smith, you know what I'm saying? Like
Ozzie Smith, Ozzie Newsome.
Ricky Nelson's, all that aspect of baseball has been removed from the game where it's like, man, that dude's fast. You see how fast he stole them bases? Like, they don't really want to do that no more. They just want to hit the ball hard as all hell. At least that's my opinion. Baseball dude, if I'm wrong, show me about myself. You know what I'm saying? Prove me wrong. I'll start watching your sport. And, so saying that to say, like, we get to this thing of like a mix of folks are just like, we just want to have a good showing because we're not really good at this. So we're just, almost like people couch the idea that we should be competitive. And it's like, yeah, like them other people play soccer. We just show up for it every once in a while. When it's like, nah, it's like people, it's not a, it's a major U.S. investment in soccer. There's a lot of people playing the sport. You know what I mean? We got, again, a lot of immigrant communities where the sport is big in the States. You know what I'm saying? And they tracking, if you have pay for a television, or even if you plug in an antenna, I'm almost positive wherever you live, there's a station in Spanish that is playing games from overseas. Playing games from Mexico, from South America, and you can watch them. Telemundo, I know, broadcast them. I think Univision broadcast them, and that's like the way TV work. Just because you ain't watching it, don't mean it's not important. It just means somebody else is watching it. So, the interest is there, But like we sort of entered this, and even in the broadcast this year, I mean, I find the broadcast people to be hilarious, especially Alexi Lawless. He'd be wilding, like, yeah, crush them. Like, I think that's part of the stick for the soccer world. It's kind of like, yeah, you can like talk trash about beating the other countries. You know what I mean? Where like, our American sports commentators like almost don't pick sides. You know what I'm saying? Which is like, nah, man, I'm on our side. Like we want to beat them.
we American sports commentators pick players and not teams,
Yeah,
right? Like people will be like, Lamar Jackson's really good.
yeah,
Christian McCaffrey is amazing, right? Like we'll say that versus like, I want the 49ers to win.
right.
uh, but it does play to more of a, frankly, global way that people are perceiving sports, where it's like, whether it's, the World Cup or club matches, right? Premier League, La Liga, like, it's Serie A. Like, it's like, yo, we want these people to win, and we are unrelenting about that. And we have two people who are unrelenting about it. The closest you get in America is probably like the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the closest thing of like, we care about us and nobody else. Like, still talking about six rings. You know what I mean? Like, still hold, kind of the Motown of professional football. Like, still holding on to when Barry Gordy was around.
Still got a shot. You know what I'm saying?
Still got a shot. But one of the other things that, and I had the pleasure of being in London last week with the
Oh yeah.
with the games, and actually being in Piccadilly Square when Morocco beat Portugal. And that was so laden with different forms of identity, right? And it really helped me understand a little deeper because, you know, it was Morocco, but it was all North African countries and it was all Arab countries. Like, everybody was out there, and for a night, everybody was Moroccan. You could be Algerian, you could have been Turkish. Like, everybody was accepting the fact that these places that are maligned and not thought of as like good soccer places, right? Because, let's be clear, while this is a beautiful game and people from all over the country, you only have to watch FIFA Uncovered on Netflix if you get a chance to really start to understand some of the deep stuff happening in soccer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, far be it from me, I'm not into one of people like, oh, they are corrupt, but some people got locked up. Let's call it that. I ain't gonna say they're corrupt. I'm gonna say some people went to jail.
There's some stuff happening.
Some stuff happened. It was some money went to somebody for somebody else.
Yeah.
But like, this idea that like African and Arab and Asian, but teams don't play good enough, which is the very kind of the same way we'll say, these teams are all athletes and no structure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's the same kind of idea, right? So the idea that like
skill level is not there,
yeah, like
it's
the individual skill level is one thing, but the collective way they play isn't good enough to beat either South American teams, including Brazil. So it's not all race. Some of it's just this idea of this location and the way that people play. And so Morocco winning has and did so much for the North African, because it's also, another PSA here. It is important for some of my really pro-Black brothers and sisters to remember that Black people, as we call them today, is mostly mostly populate the continent of Africa. That is true.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone in Africa is not what you consider in America Black.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make it less African as a continent.
Yeah.
Because your friends went to Morocco and didn't get a good interaction. It doesn't make it them less African because you went to the corner store and the brothers and sisters they was Muslim sold you ham.
Right.
It doesn't make them less African. So we less African. Like, we have to get over that because that's not just geopolitics. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. 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 And it's and I understand where people are. Maybe I do understand where people are coming from, but like we there are like geopolitical social realities that are happening, like the dynamics of the societies that we're talking about, are far above, far more complicated than than like a structural lens that just goes, you know, blackness in this way. Like, not saying that we still need to engage in various ways of pushing back, about anti-blackness, what have you. But there's a lot more stuff happening there. You know what I'm saying? Than just I think the as it was happening, right? Even like first of all, Morocco, damn tough team. Like they was playing, you know, good ball. Like the defense was impeccable. You know what I'm saying? For most of the tournament until the skill
Absolutely.
level got higher. Just so the teams got tougher. Which I think is not. I think like you could say in like basketball on the world level. I mean, the U.S. is still far ahead. They're not as far ahead as when we were kids.
No, not at all.
You know what I'm saying? Like Spain, you would say like the US, Spain, was it Croatia?
Yeah.
So usually Croatia and Serbia. Lithuanians used to be super tough, not so much these days. France is getting better. You know what I'm saying? They got France got fair, but like the teams the countries that used to that basically like it's like, yo, the US just can't show up and win, which we've known since the Redeem team in the early 2000s. Argentina, you know what I mean? Not so much this recent generation, but the previous generations. Whereas, like, yeah, the world started to catch up to the skill level, you know what I'm saying? And also shock and awe of the nature of American sports. Like, the shock and awe wore off, and then the skill level got better. So, the contention I always hear with that about, subjects like African soccer and Asian country soccer is, their capacity is, to me, I mean, it's obviously some ethnocentrism and other stuff in there. Like, I live on Earth. I know, I understand that, but it's also not an acknowledgement that, like, well, if more and more the sport it grows in those countries and in the structure around it. I mean, even the NBA's investment in basketball in Africa, is about, I mean, obviously it's about two things. I think one, they trying to make money, and similar to baseball, trying to find as many potential basketball players as possible.
Absolutely.
I think it's not as insidious as basketball. I mean, baseball's operation with my brothers in the Caribbean and South America, where they feel like they kind of put people in a bad spot, like where they don't got a lot of options to come into the sport. But that's my opinion. Again, baseball, dude. You know what I'm saying? So if you feel some kind of way, tell me about myself.
Hey, man, I want some of these black baseball brothers, man. Tell Jess what's really happening, man. And y'all is working on some stuff, man.
Say I'll be checking in on the baseball because we used to really like baseball in our community, and now we be like, baseball. Also, I've been reading Ricky Nelson, Howard Bryant's biography of Ricky Henderson, and then I just watched the Willie Mays doc on HBO. That's pretty dope. And it reminds me, like, yo, man, we was really in like baseball. Like, you know what I'm saying? We was out here in these baseball streets, and now we not, but in the same way. But it's still like, go ahead, Mookie Betts. You know what I'm saying? Mookie, like, go get him.
Yeah. Hey, no, I mean, and so I think, you make a great point about understanding the complexities of like global stuff beyond, and we talk about this often, beyond your borders. Like, yes, there are countries that have anti-black sentiment, and it can be fueled by a variety of reasons that is fueled by. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't disqualify Morocco from they play in the Africa's Cup. Like, they all play each other. That's what continent they're on. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's a win for all of African soccer when they win. It's not just for North African soccer or just for the Arab world. And I think it's important for us to broaden our understandings. I think, this every 4 years, it gives us a time to broaden our understanding of these things. Quick thing about the NBA. It's been about 30 years now since the dream team went out there since basically when America got beat by Russia, and then we went and got all the big guns to run through the rest of the country, rest of the world.
We ain't got the cousin lobby to show up and be like, "Hey man, they beat us, man. Go get you. I'm gonna get my cousins."
We're gonna get my cousins, so we went and got our cousins, and then people from other countries showed we don't care. But once your cousins went back in the house and you brought your other cousins out that couldn't fight as well,
Right.
the rest of the world showed you we don't care about them neither. But if you look at the NBA 30 years later, you have Giannis, you have Joel Embiid, right? You have Luka Doncic, what's big dude from
oh man, Jokic.
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 Yeah, I'm saying you got Jokic. So you have, I mean, frankly, 4 to 5 of the top 10 players in the NBA right now are not American born.
Yeah.
Right. Now, for my woke brothers and sisters, don't take that as an attack on that they taking basketball from us. Doesn't mean that. And basketball doesn't belong to you, as you could tell. It doesn't belong to you. You play it. It's a difference. So that is a thing of understanding that the sports are global, that sports don't have like a limitation anymore, right? So if you got a kid that, maybe ain't the best in some of these other sports, don't hesitate, not just for soccer or football, but don't hesitate for tennis. Like you look at Francis Tiafoe in the U.S. Open, you look at, the history of black tennis, we've talked about that, like squash, like we have to understand that sports are global and the possibilities are global, and not to necessarily put these limitations on the sport just because it's the one we see on television. Because if that was the case, you would only go to lawyers that helped you when you was in a car accident, or you'd only go to McDonald's. So don't just do the stuff on TV, like, and salute to the Argentinian team. I mean, Messi, he put himself in Diego Maradona, rare air now.
Yeah.
Right. There's a position for him to be, kind of seen as the best, at least the best player of this generation now. Especially since Ronaldo didn't win one. And so I think it's interesting in a time for folks to be able to reflect and learn. And then, the 2026 World Cup will be in the United States, Canada, and Mexico.
Yeah.
Which I think will be fascinating. And hopefully the groundwork will be done to really be able to have people get access to understanding what it is and understanding kind of the global take once that happens. That's going to be exciting.
I think it'll be a great opportunity. I mean, and hopefully folks will take advantage of it too. And I think it's beneficial for our community to really embrace like the connectivity to other places, right? Like you can be American and a part of the US, and this is your home and your neighborhood and your town and everything else, and also connect with these other things that may be I'll be transparent. I root for all of the African teams. I root for all the teams of
absolutely
that haven't traditionally been the powers within global soccer. Because I'm like, I want to see South Korea break through. I want to see Senegal break through. Senegal be looking tough. Ghana, I was excited for Morocco. I mean, I think the other thing that's going to be interesting at the next World Cup here is that it's going to expand to 48 teams.
You're going to see a lot more. Frankly, you're going to see a lot more African teams and Asian, a lot more African and Asian teams.
Yeah, and then and so the U.S., Mexico, and Canada all, I think, automatically get in as the host countries. But then there's some seeding, and so it's going to be an even bigger, field. I think the biggest field, and I didn't really, it's sort of interesting too when you start learning more about the day World Cup history. And they're like, oh, well, only these teams have won. And it's like, well, parts of this, y'all was the only teams y'all brought. Like, of course y'all won. Like it was like Argentina, Brazil, you know what I'm saying, France,
Germany.
Like, it was like, so wait a minute. Like, despite the development, like, when you watch even like some of the South American countries like Colombia and Ecuador, typically have, pretty strong teams. They we might assume that they have as strong a history of attending and being in the World Cup as Brazil. It's like actually they don't. You know what I'm saying? Even in Europe, every European country has not had necessarily equal access to the experience of playing in the World Cup. You know what I'm saying? And we can get into whatever the global politics and colonial history of all of that is that makes that the case. But it's I think this is something I think we'd be remiss if we didn't speak on it a little bit. Because there was, for those that don't know, the many of those Gulf states and polities depend on migrant labor. And as you could imagine, the conditions are not good. And there's been articles about it. I'll see if I can pull up a few to share because I think it's important to just say, as is still the case, often when something gets built and there's a big to do, working people take a bad one or in some ways fodder for the exuberance and the fun of other people. And we still got ways to go to some find a space to we're gonna have this great event and the world's gonna come and everyone's gonna celebrate and watch great athletics and pride in your country and excitement. And also let's treat humans with some dignity and respect and make sure that they're getting fairly compensated for their experience. But it's so I don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah,
2026
I think I've been thinking about that. I mean, to call out to your point, just like the Nepalese and folks from all across South Asia, as an aside, who were brought to build these cities, regardless of the World Cup,
right?
Regardless,
that's why I wanted to center. Like the World Cup shines a light on it, but this is not a new thing. Like it didn't just.
No, these are the people who are coming to these countries and these nation states that 25 years ago it was a desert, and that's not I'm not making a kind of defamative statement on these places. Like literally some of these places were not there 25 years ago, right? Like these are planned cities in ways that America, we don't imagine planned cities. Everything is here. And we just either try to build on it or build around it versus like we're going to create something anew. So it's just a different lens. But yes, these mega cities that we now go to and go out in the desert and get on ATVs and think like they were like desert lords and shit.
Right. You feel like you're going on a grand adventure when you're like,
like these places and like riding camels and shit. These places are places that are built by labor from other countries. And sometimes people go back home in a box.
Yeah.
Right. And, this is not my plea for everybody to, kind of renounce capitalism, far from it. But my point is, like, know what you're doing when you're doing it. So just as we ask people to watch their anti-blackness, we ask people to watch what they're doing when they're coming to America. We ask people to watch what they're doing when they're consuming, kind of cultural appropriation, right? These are all the things that in America we are very particular about asking other people from other countries to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We also have to be conscious that when we're going to other places, acknowledging that what you may be doing and the fun you may be having may actually be on the backs of other people who are treated much like your people in your country.
Absolutely. And I just, Rajee, sour note Rajee out here, but we just got to touch on it. And the reality is, like, I'm sure somewhere there's going to be some stuff built. I mean, at least one thing, and I'm gonna say it. The amount of public funds that go into stadium and facility building in the United States. You know what I'm saying? Whatever sport owners, if they need your field, shut up and let them use it. You know what I'm saying? Make it happen. Don't be talking about what we need. We're gonna need to get a public subsidy because they, ain't nothing newer in America than being somebody already got a lot of money saying, I need some more public money to help me to, not spend my money on this thing everybody gonna use. Because suddenly you find the idea that everyone should contribute with once you got a gigantic financial lead. But also like, it's important for us to bear witness, like global labor is a real thing, the struggle for fair experience. I think it's important that, and I would say just, looking at it from a travel and tourism as a tourism situation, everybody that I know, a lot of y'all enjoy cruises and boats, but them boats is staffed by people, it's crewed by people that ain't always getting the best experience. And, and I've been on a cruise, one real cruise, and I had a great time with my family. It was a great moment, for us and what happened there. But also I couldn't escape the reality that, like, I know that some of these brothers that's running this boat, I don't know if I don't, you know what I'm saying? I ain't saying they was getting treated bad, but I can't say for sure they were being treated well. And that bothered me. And I decided, I don't think I'm getting on no more of these boats. Other people, do your thing. I think I'm gonna try to do some other experiences. I just think it's important from that connection perspective and the way we think of ourselves and the way we think of the world. You know what I mean? Because we can be, quite frankly, seduced in two different poles, right? From one pole of like almost a romanticism of this global struggle for a new world, and that there's these very clear lines of like, that side is this and our side is that, and one day we're going to take that side down. And then study world history, it's kind of like it never really totally plays out that way. Societies change, quite frankly. Worlds change, world orders change, the structure and the control of power changes, but very rarely, sort of the storybook upthrowing of power and then another
absolutely
power. Very rarely does that happen, and sure that hasn't happened with humans. Like, we're everywhere that humans are. And not saying that we shouldn't strive for the most equitable, fair, and decent society that we can achieve, but I just want us to have some perspective on each other, give each other some space to, like, yeah, I know I'm trying to make the world a better place, but right now I want to go eat this sandwich and take a nap, or like have a hug, hang out with my kids, and not be in an end of the world fight for change. On the other side of that pole, if just making it a bifurcation, so to speak, or a 2-point pole conversation, I think there's multiple poles. The other side of like, you should just do whatever makes money and is fun without any regard for the impact. It's like, no, that's not cool either. Like, we need to, we should strive to have some sort of equitable thinking, not just what's happening in the games when they come to this part of the world, but also like, what can we raise awareness about, if money's going to be flowing to make the experience this great experience, make sure that money flows to, don't just flow to the same people. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm sure Atlanta's going to host some games. It's a global city. You know what I'm saying? New York's going to host, man, I don't know all the cities. I think it's like 16 cities. I think all the cities.
And it's like, it's all the, kind of usual suspects: New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Boston, Atlanta, Miami, I think one place in Texas,
Toronto,
Bay Area,
Monterey,
Mexico City,
and
it's three in Mexico.
Yeah.
Toronto and Vancouver.
Yeah.
In Canada, Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle's gonna have a match.
Northern California, Southern California. So yeah.
Yeah. Like, so let's be prepared. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully the US, I think the team's gonna be better. You know what I mean? We have a strong showing. Let's see if we can get breakthrough. But also, like, is there an opportunity for us as Americans, to think about, like, how could I look at this as an opportunity to make some global connections that maybe change the way we operate in the world, and bring something else, bring some other flavor, not just look at it as this, as a callous way to like sell stuff to folks that will, quite frankly, probably have lots of money, because to go across the world from some other parts of the world, usually them people got a lot of money. Not all the time, but people in them boxes, they got money. They got a lot of bread, whatever country's currency system may be. You know what I'm saying? And like, is there a place to connect with the different cultures that'll be coming here, and the fans that are traveling here, or locally? You know what I'm saying? If you're in a city with let's say the Ghanaian team is coming, and you in a city with a lot of Ghanaian citizens, a lot of Ghanaian community, a lot of, like, how can you plug in? Or y'all like,
that's right.
Ghana in the US, we about to go at it, but then we're gonna eat some jollof after, like, and kick it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and maybe we'll get the kids together, play some matches, or like, even if they're not already playing.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
No,
like,
it's a chance to it's a chance to go to the top of the eight and really think globally, and allow ourselves to continue to be global citizens. There's another time for this conversation, but one thing I'd bemoan, and when you look back at history, and you'll hear it in some of our upcoming episodes of how like the Black presence globally and talking and communicating globally goes back over 100 years. And, Black people in America have largely retrenched from global engagement, even in the last 50 years, right? Outside of maybe fighting for apartheid, right? So I think there's a place, and if a sport is your gateway drug, fine. If Jollof is your gateway drug,
Right.
that is absolutely fine. If any kind of food you want to eat or anybody's jersey is a gateway to understanding kind of like the global community, I think it's important. And for all the folks across the country and the world that was able to watch a thrilling game, a thrilling end, salute, congrats to Argentina, and don't be afraid to watch some of these matches. And also, MLS, y'all can cut us a check later, but don't be afraid to watch some of these, Major League Soccer games in America. I mean, there's good soccer being played on the men's and women's side, which is important to remember.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. No, and I'll tell you that. I mean, MLS is good, and the NWSL is fantastic. It's good. Like, and don't forget, next time in the Women's World Cup, like, unlike some of our other structurally, the way we're shown to engage, the one of the things I appreciate about the sport, and even, hopefully it will grow, but like, and I only say that just because unfortunately we operate with the narrative that like, oh, just like women playing the sports, it's not that they're not as whatever. It's good. Watch. Like
absolutely.
The play is fantastic, the energy, everything about it. And it's I would encourage you, if you've never watched, international football. I'm trying to get better, on the Paramount Plus. You can get some of the UEFA games and some of them. I'm trying to, the timing of the day that the game matches come on be throwing me off with the Champions League, the Premier
League. The Premier League, the Premier League is always, I mean, that's the one that you see like on the NBC. That's always a challenge because they're 5 hours ahead, right? So all the games are taking place in England. So it's kind of like they're playing at 2:00, which means they're playing at 9:00. And then for you, they're playing at 6:00, right? So there is that reality of particularly, European games. I think the World Cup, they solved that by having them just play at night. So that way, the rest of the world can watch it during the day. Because it was so far ahead, right? And even a lot of the games when I was in England were still 3 or 4 hours ahead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? In order for people to watch it across the land. So yeah, check out MLS, and there are things that are happening in major league sports. There are also ways to tap into your respective cities.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the Timbers do it well in the Thorns. But Philadelphia Union, and there's also starting to be, just because I know everyone always needs some hip hop connection. That we need some sort of rapper to be connected to something to make it make sense.
Right, we get a rapper involved.
Kevin Durant is an investor in the Philadelphia Union, and Yo Gotti's an investor in DC United. So just in case you needed some sort of rapper to make sense of this, I just helped you watch soccer because you think a rapper's involved. So there that goes.
And make it more legitimate. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it's that tap in and embrace it is all, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, I think that's all I had. Just, I think there's some other thoughts I have that I'll save for later, but just there is something to, building a broader, a more global orientation, while maintaining your understanding of what it means to be present here. That I think is beneficial, specifically, for the way Black and brown folks move, and deal with, certain dynamics of our experience. But I think it's for the betterment in the long-term future of our country, of our society, like finding a way to have a more robust global connection. I think it's important, and so I want to lean into that. So that's all I got. You got anything else?
No, sir.
All right. So with that, I'm saying peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, Justice. Good Brothers is a creative conversation between me and my good brother, and is a part of the Oldhead podcast as it currently exists. You can support the podcast by listening, rating, and subscribing where you listen, sharing. Those are the main things. But you can also support by becoming a patron. You can search Justice Rajee on Patreon and subscribe to help me offset the monthly costs. You can also head to the Etsy shop. If you search Ask Your Oldhead, you can look for the shop. Having a little bit of SEO issues. However, if you look up Justice Rajee, look up the shop, or if you go to askyouroldhead.com and click on the link for the Etsy shop, it'll take you right to it. And you can buy a sweatshirt or a t-shirt. The art, the culture, shirt, and all of that goes directly to the cost to make the podcast. So if you want you a fly sweatshirt, got a new style up there, go check it out. You know what I'm saying? Be the first one in your neighborhood to get one. Other than that, though, please just listen, subscribe if we're coming to the end of 2022. We got some cool stuff in development coming as soon as January. And I'm looking forward to sharing. So with that, say stay warm, stay focused, stay safe, stay responsible. Yeah, all of those things, man. And yeah, that's it. So, peace.